Okie dokie, Dustin.
What's up?
Well, here we are. My kids aren't sleeping, and we just have to get started. So,
Yep, here we go.
Hope that all works out. Welcome back, everybody, to the show, to the Hoopercast. So glad you're here. So we're gonna talk about a new release, Dustin, and let's my brain's kind of fried, so let's just get into the film.
Okay. No small talk tonight.
No. Did I tell you how delicious dates are?
You did.
Oh, on the show?
I can't remember.
Well, just for the record, dates are amazing.
They are.
I have twice. I got them at Costco and they're so good. And then for like 4 or 5 weeks, they did not have them. And so I had to buy like dried plums, like some kind of peasant, and they were no good.
Yes.
No good at all. And then
terrible.
I finally got them again because they were back. And I was so happy that I bought 2 bags and I ate like an entire bag on the one day.
Yes.
And then I had a tummy ache because that's a lot of dates.
That's a lot of dates
for one person to eat.
Right.
But they've been so good. And I've run out already this week as well. But I'm overjoyed to have them back.
You gotta ration those things, man.
I know.
You have to go back to plums.
Well, what happened was I was on them and they were lasting all week, and then I went without them for too long. And so then when they came back, it was like dates.
Yeah. Date withdrawal, and then
date withdrawal.
Yeah, and then you relapsed.
It was date night.
It was date night. I've never met anybody who goes, "I love a plum."
Not even Professor Plum.
Not even Professor Plum.
Hates them.
Yeah, he can't stand them. That's why his nickname is Professor Plum.
That's why he killed the butler. The butler was like, "Do you like plums?" He's like, "For the last time, no!
I hate plums.
What shall I murder you with?" This candlestick.
In the study.
Here we are in the study. Hey, how long has it been since you played Clue?
I believe the last time I played, I don't want this to reflect poorly on our alma mater.
Okay.
But I believe I played that in a class. It was a class called Detective Narratives. Where we had to, write detective stories. Like, what's the structure of a detective story? How do you crack it? That sort of thing. No pun intended. Yeah. And we played Clue, and I got really into it. And I take Clue really seriously, man. I take notes, do the whole thing.
Notes?
Got my little flip book.
Oh, wow.
All right. Got my little pen that I lick my little pencil, my little golf pencil. I write furiously. And then I refer back to it later. I flip those pages really fast, and I'm like, aha, but you said that on the night of the 7th, you were at the movies.
Do you call everybody a dame?
Only the women.
Oh, well, I mean, okay. Yeah. I have not played Clue in a long time, but I remember I was pretty good at it, and it was a really fun game.
Yes, it's a great game.
That's one of the ones that I might have to get for my kids and try to teach them how to play, because Clue was fun. You do that thing where you show them clues under the table, and you just like, no, it's not that one, it's not that guy. Yep. You just it's so good.
I can cross that off the list. Okay.
There's a reason why that has been attempted to be adapted to the screen a couple of times, because it's a really cool. Well, I was about to say it's a really cool idea. It is for a board game.
I have not seen the movie that came out. Was that like in the late 80s?
Let me find out. Yeah.
The Clue movie that had Christopher Lloyd in it. I remember that being good. I don't know if it actually was, but because I haven't seen it since like middle school.
1985.
Maybe. Okay, 1985.
Yeah. Tim Curry. Well, Tim Curry's the murderer. Come on.
I remember it being good. I also you'd have to fact check me on this, but I believe when that was delivered to cinemas, they had filmed different endings, and so you didn't know which ending you were going to get.
They had 3 endings.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, ending A, B, and C.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I remember it being a good movie, but I haven't seen it since like middle school, so it's been a very long time. I need to watch it again. So a few years ago, Clue started putting out like, you know how Monopoly does, like, this is Monopoly, Pokemon-opoly, or like whatever it is.
Yeah. We have Doctor Who Monopoly. I think I think the Monopoly we played with our daughter was like a Disney Parks Monopoly or something.
Yeah, they have Monopoly for everything. Well, they started doing Clue for everything, and I saw that they had an office themed Clue.
Oh,
and it was like,
wow.
It was like, Dwight in the break room with a stapler or whatever.
Who's the murdered party?
Oh, I don't know.
Like Bob Vance?
Creed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game is just Creed, not Clue.
Creed. Yes. Yes.
That's really awesome, actually.
Yeah, I always wanted it, and I completely forgot about it till this exact moment.
Imagine being Milton Bradley and being like, oh, yeah, like even just in television alone, we could make like a Modern Family Clue.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
We could do a Parks and Rec Clue. We could do a Sopranos Clue.
Yes.
Imagine that. Imagine like the bigger the cast is, like the more people can play. Like imagine if there was like a Simpsons Clue.
Yeah.
You can play with like 36 people.
The game takes 72 hours to...
It's like Dungeons and Dragons.
You got to rule out everybody.
You take a picture of the board, like, all right, we got to go to work tomorrow.
All right, groundskeeper Willie didn't do it. We know that. Yeah, it's like all the little side characters.
Yeah, every single bit part.
Yes.
Okay, well, it wasn't Troy McClure. It wasn't that one guest spot by George Bush Sr.
Yes. It wasn't Leonard Nimoy from the Monorail episode.
It wasn't Bleeding Gums Murphy.
I'm looking at the back of the Clue, The Office box right now.
Okay.
Dunder Mifflin Regional Manager Michael Scott calls a mandatory team building event where 6 employees must work independently to figure out who killed Toby Flenderson. It would be Toby. I
should have thought of that. It would be Toby. That's
what
so
office
funny.
weapon was used and where at Dunder Mifflin did it occur? The employee that wins gets a week's paid vacation. Will Dwight do what it takes to thwart the competition? Will Stanley sit back and work on his crossword puzzle? Will Andy's overconfidence work against him? If the crime is not solved by the end of the day, Michael will give up and go home.
So good.
The weapons are the world's best boss coffee mug, a pretzel day pretzel, a Dundee trophy, a bicycle chain, Mr. A knife, which is one of my favorite Office jokes. Do you remember that?
No.
Dwight has knives, like weaponry, hidden around the office, and he's showing the camera a couple of his hiding places, and one of them is in a file cabinet, and there's a file called Mr. A knife. And he pulls out a knife, of course. A ream of paper, nunchucks, and a George Foreman grill.
That's good stuff.
That's good stuff.
Wow. I want to get this game now.
I was going to say, we need to get it and play it on an episode of the Hoovercast. We got to have enough players, though. It's got to be me, you,
John,
Kellen, John. Yeah.
You can play with, I think it has to be 4, right? 3 or 4?
I think you need at least 4, probably.
Yeah. It kind of sucks with less than that. Well, let's talk about Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
This world is beyond cruelty. You've been fighting the Harkonnens for decades. My family's been fighting them for centuries. And they were massacred. Alongside my father.
Your father didn't believe in revenge. We believe in Fremen.
Let me fight beside you.
Reload!
He said that. I got that. Thanks.
I won't be fighting for him. I'm fighting for my people.
You young pup.
Do you believe in Paul?
There are signs.
The prophet. Why is that a bad thing? Use it.
Because all my visions lead to horror.
Because you lose control.
Because I gain it. Johnny, do you believe in me?
Paul Atreides is still alive.
Deal with this prophet.
Show me who you are.
Your father. Was a weak man.
Look who's back from the dead.
I will do what must be done.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope!
I will love you as long as I breathe.
This prophecy is how they enslave us!
It's not a prophecy. It's a story.
I don't care what you believe. I believe. I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis.
He who can destroy a thing has the real control of it.
All right, Dune Part 2 is the sequel to Dune Part 1. First piece of trivia there. Returning director and co-writer Denis Villeneuve. We've
Denis
also
Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve did. I just want to check on the. Okay, so yeah, and returning co-writer John Spates on the screenplay here, which is of course still based on the first book by Frank Herbert, Dune. Starring Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin. Who else returns here? Dave Bautista and Stellan Skarsgård, Charlotte Rampling, Javier Bardem, and newcomers Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, and Christopher Walken.
Hey.
And Leah Seydoux,
Leah
of course.
Seydoux, yep.
A stacked cast, a stacked director,
Yep.
and a stacked property.
Yep.
Dune's great. I'm gonna go straight into it. Cause this is part 2. If you haven't seen Dune Part 1, we're obviously gonna be spoiling plot elements from it. Just as a prelude, because we talked about Dune on the show, but not like formally. We didn't review it. We just sort of said, "Oh, did you see Dune? Yeah, it was great."
Okay, cool.
And we've talked privately about how good Dune is.
Yeah.
I saw Dune on HBO Max because it came out like a week after my son was born. And so I wasn't going anywhere. And so I watched it right here in this chair, actually.
Oh, okay.
So the first time. So this time I actually got out to see it in theaters and saw it on Sunday, saw it in the middle of the day. I usually see movies at night, but this was a daytime thing for me. And I was glad I did because Dune is loud. Dune is one of those movies where like if you try to watch it at home, like without headphones, you constantly have to like mess with the remote. Because it'll be really quiet and characters will be talking, whispers and sound design. And then like a ship blows up and you're like, oh, geez.
Oh, Lord. Yep.
So in Dune Part 2, we continue the story. Paul Atreides and his mother, Lady Jessica, are with the Fremen in the desert of Arrakis. And they have fled a coup against their house. Paul's father is killed, and the Harkonnens have taken back control of the spice trade on Arrakis. And this was all aided by the Emperor. The Emperor lent his personal guards and army to help the Harkonnens take back Arrakis. Anyway, so Paul is learning more about his abilities and his supposed destiny as this messiah on Arrakis for the Fremen. And he's uneasy about it. He's unsure about whether he should be harnessing it just for the benefit of galvanizing everybody for this uprising, or if it's, completely dishonest and kind of shitty to do that, basically.
Right.
and things ensue. Meantime,
Yes.
the Baron Harkonnen has implemented new tactics to kind of get the Fremen under control, because they keep destroying the spice equipment and it's ruining the exporting, and that's going to suck for them. And anyway, so I don't want to say too much more about the actual plot, but I enjoyed Dune Part 2. I didn't write any notes for this, so it's for all the reasons that I enjoyed Part 1. It's just expertly crafted. The direction is amazing. Again, the music by Hans Zimmer, the editing by Joe Walker, the cinematography by Greg Fraser, whatever his name is. Like, it's all so good. The sound design, once again, is just incredible.
Yep.
So incredible. The production design, I really, 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 really love for these movies. I think that Dune, the reason it has this nice broad appeal is because it has, like, the reason why it's such a success that this was adapted is because a lot of people were like, it's hard to adapt because it's a lot of weird, lofty concepts that are difficult to put to screen.
Yeah.
And in a way that is interesting to a broad audience. But then you've got an incredibly simple archetypal plot, easy, clearly defined characters, easy to follow. But you've also got this very, very elevated production design that makes it stand out so much higher above so much other things like Star Wars, for instance, like space society, space politics, uprising, clans, families, dynasties, like stuff like that. Like, what makes Dune stand apart is because it has those elements on the screen that make it seem real, instead of like glossy, bright, shiny visual effects with crisp edges. You have, I don't know how much of this was CG and how much of this was miniatures.
Yeah.
How much of it was the deserts of Jordan on location and how much of it was digital backdrop. I don't know. And that's the best part. I wasn't sitting there going like, well, that's a soundstage.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, I sat there going like, wow, this looks great. Like, things in the distance look like they're in the distance. Like, it just, the soft edge, out of focus, like everything that people talk about, the reason why effects like from film, was this shot on film? Do you know this?
I don't know.
I don't know how to find that out. Is that like on IMDb or something?
Yeah, I can find out.
Okay. I was watching a thing recently where someone pointed out like shooting on film is one reason why some visual effects age better than a lot of stuff made in recent years with digital filmmaking, because film naturally adds that kind of the film finish naturally kind of has that softness to it. And it's why things like Jurassic Park still look pretty good these days versus something made in like 2008 or 2009, because it's so crisp that you can spot it too much.
Right.
I don't know if Denis Villeneuve feels like the kind of person who would shoot on film, who would insist on shooting on film. Either way, the production design on this movie and the vision for this world is not only appropriate for the story, it's amazing in terms of cinematography. It makes it really easy to use wide shots and have them look just incredible. And there's a lot of those. God, there's one shot where Paul's walking through a crowd of people and they zoom out and there's like 1,000 people he's walking past. They look like ants. Yeah. And I was like, God, this looks great.
Yeah, it's cool.
Just incredible compositions. And anyway, I fully recommend, just for me, I obviously, if you love Dune Part 1, you're going to love Dune Part 2. We'll talk about the differences between them and other things as we go on. But for my part, everything you liked about the first movie is here. And then some. So, I recommend it for theaters.
Sweet. So, my limited research just now says, at least the last Dune was shot digital and then transferred to film and then converted back to digital. I don't know why. There's a ton of like video analysis essays and video essays about it. So I may watch one, but I'm going to assume that part 2 is done similarly. So
I really don't understand the difference between the two creatively, and it's just that's one of those departments I couldn't get into. Film is so technical, and it's just I could never dive into the motivations behind other than what's easier on set or what's easier to process. But some people have like aesthetic reasons for choosing film, and I'm always like, what are those? Please explain this to me. I don't understand.
The grain. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gives it a different look. I mean, I was listening to the Insider podcast after I watched El Camino recently, and they were talking about the difference between Breaking Bad being shot on film and El Camino being shot digitally, and kind of how they chose that was obviously just like ease and portability on set and that sort of thing. But also, it had for whatever reason, digital can give you I'm not super technical on this either, but digital can give you more option in terms of light. So there's, for instance, a scene where Jesse is using just a lighter, and it's literally the only practical light on set. And had they shot with film, it wouldn't have given them enough exposure. But with digital, it did. With modern digital, a few years ago, it wouldn't have been able to do that either. So it's progressing. But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe it is just purely creative. But as far as what they've done here, moving from digital to film back to digital, I don't understand the reasons of it. I'm going to have to do some more research on it because now I'm curious. But Dune Part 2, yeah, for me, I like this better than the first one. I really do like Dune Part 1. And so I expected to like this one. But I think I don't know, maybe I was just more captivated from the start because I was invested and had just recently watched Part 1 and, and whatever. So like I watched Part
1 the night before too.
Yeah. So it was one of those things where like, man, I'm in it. And, from moment one, it's like, let's go. I'm here. I'm down for this.
Yeah.
Dune, when I watched it the first time in theaters, Part 1, it took me a minute because I'm like, okay, let me get my bearings, figure out what's going on here. Much easier on repeat viewings, but having now like all that background in mind, I just like jumped straight in. And so it felt more like for the entire runtime here, I was like invested. And yeah, I think ultimately it's just a little bit of a stronger script. And I guess if I had to critique Part 1, it would be Part 1 feels a little bit empty in terms of actual things that happen. Like there's a few big set pieces, but what happens in between that is I think kind of like, I don't really remember. And, it's like kind of just quiet and talking and that sort of thing. And this feels a little bit more like it has more momentum. Like it feels like from scene 1, you're just moving. It's like a freight train and it will not stop. And I like that. I think that that's a really great thing. So I think if one of your issues with Part 1 was its pace, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised here. I don't know that my issue is pace, but I certainly prefer the pace of Part 2. And I really enjoy the character work done here by, most of the actors, but specifically Timothée Chalamet, who manages to take a character who I think in other hands could be a little bland, or in other hands could be a little simplistic, and really elevate him into an anti-hero. This is a guy that you root for, but he doesn't always make the decisions you want him to make, and or the decisions that he should, or the ones that are best for his people. And sometimes he lets fear drive him, and sometimes he lets pride drive him. And so these things that happen, as absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's a slow burn, and it's really believable. And I just really enjoyed his arc here. Zendaya as Chani was fantastic. And I think that she, in the first film was just kind of like this ethereal presence that, you know, she's mysterious. She's there. What's going to happen? I don't know. And here it would have been really easy to make her just like a simple, like everybody can love this character love interest.
Mm-hmm.
And instead they kind of like start down that road and then pull the rug out from under you and make her a source of conflict in a way.
Yeah.
So that she's not always in agreement with Paul. Yeah. And that's a really great decision because it helps us see Paul in the light that we should see him in, which, because it's very easy, like thinking about this as a screenwriter, you would think, okay, I have to be aware of how my audience is going to view him. And I know that the audience is going to root for him kind of no matter what he does. Yeah. So I need to have a character who can, who the audience will also like, but who can call him out and kind of remove the scales from the eyes of the audience and say like, hey, look what's happening here, and judge him the way that she judges him. And I think that's a really good decision. I understand that that's not necessarily the case in the book.
No, from what I understand, the Denis Villeneuve really added a lot of dimension to a lot of the women in the story. Like there's a lot more given to Lady Jessica and to Princess Rulin and especially to Chani.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that normally, like these days, it's like, man, I really want to like go back and read the book before I do all this stuff because people recommend the series. But when you hear about changes like this that have improved on the book, then you go, oh, well, I'm grandfathered out then.
Right.
Because I already have an idea in my head of what this should look like. So that's going to ruin the book for me. And now knowing that the characterization is better in the movie, it's like, okay, sorry, Frank.
I got it.
It's 2024. I'm in my 30s. I'm sorry I didn't read Dune. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yep. Well, this is a little bit how I feel about Lord of the Rings. Like I love the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But I almost love those movies so much that I feel like any attempt to read that book finally would come up short.
It's not bad. I mean, I've read the first book recently.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read the other two this year. It's just as a brief aside, like the extended editions are so good and we still like them and they're loved by everybody. I think you even prefer all three of them, right?
I do.
Yeah. So to me, it's sort of just like reading the extended editions.
Yeah, sure.
Except the language, but like they adapted Fellowship so well. I was reading it and I was like, God, a lot of these lines are like straight out of this book.
From it. Yeah, exactly. I've read about half of Fellowship and I was surprised at that as well.
Yeah. Like he moved some around. I'm like, wow, he did move them to better places, but it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know that you could read Lord of the Rings and having seen the films and then be like, wow, what richness this has added, except it's almost like a layer of context more than anything else.
Sure.
Again, I feel like if you're going to absorb stories, you should absorb them in their original form first and then view their adaptations. However, most people who are watching Dune have not read this book, I would wager.
Yep.
And so in this case, they're not missing out, is what I'm saying.
Yep.
They're getting a lot more balanced character priorities from the screenwriters and just very, very great execution by the director to where it's like the book's not obsolete, but hey, were you going to read Dune before you saw these films? No. So if you do, mazel tov. If not, it's fine.
Well, one of the great things about adapting this book now is you have the benefit of seeing where the series goes. So when Frank was writing these books, I don't know his process, but from what I understand, he regretted a little bit of what he did with Chani and a little bit of the way that things were happening in Dune, and so by the time Dune Messiah rolls around and the sequels,
book,
he's able to like kind of course correct a little bit. And the great thing that Denis and the writers here have is they have that knowledge. They can see the future, so to speak. And so they know like we have to write to this.
Yeah. You can seed it better.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a little bit like, Alan Rickman playing Snape saying like, I have to know where this goes so that I can play it. You know, it's that same sort of thing. It's as a writer, you now know where it goes. So you can write specifically to something that the author couldn't have because he hadn't conceived of it at the time that he wrote it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a little bit like, you know, to jump back to Lord of the Rings, it's a little bit like Tolkien. He writes The Hobbit, didn't know it was going to become the Lord of the Rings, but it did. And then he tries to rewrite The Hobbit to better match the tone of the Lord of the Rings and abandons the project. Well, so of course, when Peter Jackson comes along and decides to adapt The Hobbit, he can say, well, why don't we try to do what Tolkien tried to do and kind of match the tone and the feel of that? Whether it was successful or not is up to your opinion, but like that's an advantage that you have as a writer adapting a work. You can see the future and you can write the future. Yeah. So that's great. But yeah, I mean, it all in all, this film is fantastic in terms of its performances, in terms of the score, in terms of the visuals, visual effects. Like you said, I don't know where the seams are most of the time. And that's fantastic because I feel like just from ingesting a heavy diet of, you know, VisFX breakdowns and all this kind of stuff, sometimes I can see those seams. So it's cool to see a movie where I can't. You know, I did for all of its issues, I did feel that way about like Avatar: Way of Water, where I'm like, I don't know what's real, what's not. I don't know where all of the seams are. And that's such a cool thing to be fooled and to allow yourself to be fooled. So big props to Dune Part 2 for that. And I enjoyed it overall. I think I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I mean, I don't really have any notes other than, you know, I'm not as enthusiastic about this as I am about some films that I give 5 stars to. So it's not necessarily like a fault of the film, but I'm just saying like in terms of preference, it's not a 5-star film, but it's pretty darn close. Like I don't have anything to critique really.
You mentioned the pace, like how it was, if people felt like it was slower in part 1, it's a little quicker here. I actually really, really love the pace of part 1. And normally slow pace gets me.
Sure.
But I feel like it's just so expertly crafted. And again, the sound design and the music goes so far to sort of bridge scenes.
Sure. And
just to where you're just not sort of, because you know how sometimes you watch movies and like as soon as we go to another scene, you're like, okay, we're in a new scene.
Yeah.
We're starting a new scene. We're going to watch 7 more minutes of something.
Yeah.
And it's like the music changes when the scene change and everything. And it's and the movies that keep my attention do a lot of J and L cuts where we're beginning the sound of the next scene before we actually visually cut to it. Or we are cutting visually to the next scene while keeping the sound from the scene we were just in. So where there's nowhere you would really want to pause and go pee.
Sure. Right.
When you're watching it later at home. Those are the kind of movies where I'm like, oh, great. Yeah. This person gives a shit about my attention.
Yes, exactly.
But in Dune Part 2, I would say if there's any fault I have with it, I feel like I'm not sure if it's the pace of the film or if it's just the pace of the plot, which, hey, you know, it's adapted from a gigantic book. It's a 2-part film. It's a 5-hour total story, but hey, whatever. It felt like the Fremen capitulate pretty quickly. Like, again, the story takes place over like months or whatever.
Yeah.
At a certain point, I was like, hey guys, wait a second. Like, hey, we're jumping to some hasty guys. Let's settle down for a minute. Let's just settle down for a minute. Let's think for a second.
Sure.
I feel like we're being taken for a ride a little bit, don't you?
Yeah.
Like I felt like Chani, like me and Zendaya were just looking around like, seems pretty quick, right? Feels like we're jumping on a bandwagon, right?
Yeah. Yep.
We should stop this.
Yes. I was talking to my brother about this, and we were talking about the fact that there's so much time that elapses in this film. But you don't really get that sense. So maybe that's a fault of the film that you don't really get that sense. And I'm like, you to me, the sense comes from the building of his relationship with Chani is like, obviously time passes here from her being somewhat disinterested in him to, you know, falling in love with him and then out. It's like that clearly denotes time having passed, but it is unclear how much.
He goes from like the kiss on this Dune top And then like the next time you see them, like they're sleeping in the same tent. And I was like, hey now.
Yeah.
And so in my head, I was like, okay, it's not been made clear to me that time has passed, but I'm going to assume time has passed. Otherwise, this is really dumb.
Yeah.
And then like the scene after that is like Jessica is looking at like her belly and it's much bigger than it was last time we saw her. And I'm like, okay, so it's been months.
Yeah.
The baby has grown. Okay, thank you. But like for a second there, I was like, I'm unclear where we are in time, just a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure he didn't want to put up like 4 months later, you know, or some exposition like, you know, in the past 4 months, sleeping with you has been fantastic. You know, it's just something silly.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
That's what a lesser screenwriter would have done. It would have been Paul going into Javier Bardem's tent and being like, I've been here for 4 months. Javier Bardem.
I kept seeing memes. I haven't really been on social media too much in the past month or so, but I kept seeing memes of Javier Bardem's face.
Yeah.
Talking about Lisan al-Gaib, like whenever someone shows someone how to use a computer or something, like something very, very basic.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's weird. And then I came out of the movie and I was like, I understand now, because that guy is
hook, line, and sinker.
The thought it occurred to me during the movie, especially when he's talking to his little council, I was like, oh, Stilgar is Morpheus. That's who this character is. He is this like weirdo that everyone laughs at because he believes that the one is coming. Yeah. And he believes he's found the one, and he's trying to tell everyone, I found the one. And they're like, Stilgar, you crazy mofo. You didn't find the one. And then every time Paul does something, he's like, Lisan al-Gaib.
As it is written.
As it is written, even to the point where Paul's like, I'm not Lisan al-Gaib. I don't believe in that stuff. It's made up. And then he like calls his buddies together and goes, of course he'd be too humble to admit it. And the one guy like kind of grins cartoonishly and nods. And I was like, is that guy being sarcastic or like, do they, oh no, they buy this. So it was a little cartoonish, I think, in the depiction of some of these people.
Yeah.
But considering the whole movie is about, you know, to an extent about blind fundamentalism and demagoguery, and just, you know, the blind following of whether you create or rally behind a messianic figure, whether you believe they are that person, the key to solving everything or not. Obviously the depth of the story here is exploring the ethics of rallying behind a cure-all figure.
Yes.
And whether or not what the actions that figure is about to undertake are any better than the system they're trying to overthrow.
Right.
Which is
and in Paul's case, it's like, how do you deal with the fact that people are throwing their respect at you and their admiration at you constantly? And what does that do over time? And I guess we could jump into spoilers. If you're ready. So
let's jump into spoilers. Let me check on my kids one more time.
Yep, go for it.
I see possible futures all at once. And in so many futures, our enemies prevail. But I do see a way. There is a narrow way through. Is to you. Do you believe me?
This is a form of power that our world has not yet seen. The ultimate power.
I want you to know I will love you as long as I breathe.
You will never lose me as long as you stay who you are.
Consider what you're about to do, Paul Atreides.
Silence!
Yeah, so I guess one of the things is like, so they drink the worm juice, and I guess this is the catalyst, because Paul is initially he has reservations about going
to the
south. And so, and it's partially because he has these visions of famine and disease that happen after he would travel there. But also I think he's afraid of what the more, extreme fundamentalists in the South might do upon his arrival. And so when he's eventually talked into it, he still carries that trepidation until he drinks the worm juice, whatever that was called. I don't remember the blue junk.
Yeah. The something in the desert. Water of life.
Water of life. So he drinks the water of life, and that seems to be this like catalyst that awakens some sort of something in Paul that should not be awakened. And likewise, it has opened the eyes of the unborn child in Lady Jessica's womb. And
Alia.
And this is this is super weird, but it's such a cool story beat that like, as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, this is really cool. Yeah. And so this idea that the child is talking to her mother and the mother. Yeah. And she's talking back and like communicating to Paul on behalf of the baby. And
for a second, I just thought that she was just saying your sister wants to know, your sister doesn't trust, your sister says you're a bad liar. It's like, is this just like some fun, playful way of saying, I think you're,
yeah. I think you're a bad liar.
Right.
Yeah. It does come off that way, and then it's like, oh no, like she's actually talking to this.
She's
baby.
In there, yeah.
And then it's like, oh, the baby's actually talking back,
right?
And then he has the vision of his sister, and like this is all super cool stuff, and it's really a little bit mind-boggling. But what's really cool about it for me is like, so obviously we know like Star Wars is at least to some degree built on the back of Dune,
sure,
and John Carter and and all these other things. It's like a mixture of a lot of things. But for me, Star Wars, while anybody that knows anything will tell you like Star Wars is a fantasy, it is, but it's almost a shame to be a fantasy. It's like a fantasy masquerading as a sci-fi, and it wants all the clout that comes with sci-fi, but none of the clout that comes with fantasy.
Yeah, Dance with Who Brung You.
Yeah, it's the idea of like, okay, this is a Jedi, and a Jedi's a wizard, but I'm not really going to embrace that moniker or like
because that's silly.
Because it's silly. This is like
is serious.
Yeah. So with Dune, it's like Frank Herbert's like, you know what? Whatever. Like this is a fantasy film, and it's a hard fantasy film. It's also sci-fi, and he manages to do both. And that's what I love in these moments with, the child, because that could easily be a really goofy, like silly kind of thing in someone else's hands.
Also, just consider like, just briefly, if you're having trouble, if you watched this film and you had trouble with that aspect of it, remember that this is 8,000 years in the future from where we are now. It's in a whole universe of planets, and the sandworms and the Bene Gesserit and these things that, all you got to do is rationalize that these systems that the Bene Gesserit harness and tap into are scientific systems within the universe or previously undiscovered magical elements that are supernatural elements that work in the universe. To me, it's the same as like being certain that there is no God or something. It's like, I don't know, there could be. I mean, like, can you, right. You know what I mean? Like, can you, you don't think in 8,000 years, there might be some worm pee-pee that is magic? And I know it sounds stupid and silly, but like, it's a little ignorant to say that wouldn't happen.
That wouldn't happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure spice makes people travel between planets either, guy. But
yeah, this is true. Well, yeah, but I mean, I guess that could be a sticking point for some people to be like, this is just too goofy. I can't buy this or whatever. But I don't think the film presents itself as being goofy or outlandish. Like it takes everything so seriously.
Yeah.
And not in a way, like sometimes we say that about movies that we're making fun of, but like this deserves to be taken seriously. And it's like, hey, this is happening. And what are the implications of a child now, essentially knowing the secrets of the universe.
Yeah.
A fetus now knowing the secrets of the universe. And
God, that poor fetus. Like, it's like, oh, Jesus. Oh, so much.
Need to know all this.
Too much stuff.
Yeah.
When she got to the part about the Paul McCartney conspiracy theories, I bet she was like, stop, make it stop.
Oh,
this is so dumb.
This. Oh, Paul is dead. Oh.
Paul is dead. That's why she keeps whispering Paul. She's not talking to Paul Atreides.
She's talking about Paul McCartney.
McCartney.
Yes. There's nothing left of our civilization except for the Beatles records. That's the only thing left in 8,000 years from now or whatever. Just the Beatles. The Fremen are in the desert listening to Sgt. Pepper's.
That's funny.
The movie takes itself so seriously, and you get caught up in it too. At least I did. Like, this is really cool, and this is a great story, and I love everything about this, and I'm having fun. And so, like, it's not mutually exclusive. I can be challenged artistically. I can be challenged sort of like ethically. Like, let's put this thought into practice. Like, what would it be like to have this demagogue, this one person that everyone's falling behind for not a lot of good reasons, but it's like, and then putting all our hope in this thing. What's the end result of that? Yeah. And that's kind of cool. It's also interesting to kind of look at this as like the dark, twisted version of Jesus Christ. Yeah. It's such an interesting concept that it challenges you, mentally, but then it also is like just fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing outright fun. Like, I feel like we've relegated fun in film to the Marvel formula of quips and like,
whimsy.
And whimsy. But movies can just be fun because they're cool to view, and not because people are like cracking jokes and, they share a nice romantic kiss, and then a character falls out of the sky and lands next to him. And it's like, oh, sorry, man. No worries, bro. And it's like, some weird, goofy, off the wall thing.
Yeah.
That's not what makes a movie fun. And it's certainly not like, a superhero's son peeing in his mouth, but like you have, hey, I harped on Ant-Man for a while. I'm going to harp on Aquaman for a while now.
I was trying to remember what film you were talking about. Like, we're going through my Rolodex, like piss and mouth films.
Superhero pee.
I was in the attic of my mind palace looking for that box. Like, where is this? A pen in my mouth. Like,
but yeah, like, it's not goofy. Like, it's not goofy, whimsical fun. It's just fun because it's cool.
Yeah,
and
it's entertaining,
and it's entertaining, and it's challenging, and even if you took all the challenge out of it and you were just watching a straight story about a guy doing some stuff, like, that's enough because that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah, I agree. I think this movie is really like I don't want to say the height, but like movies like this are what I want to see, because it's simple enough. Like, honestly, like, if you forget all of like the plot mechanics and you just focused on like just basically what's going on, what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what Paul is, his goals.
Yeah. And
you understand like the general vibe around what's going on with his actions. The rest of it, like the Space Guild and the Bene Gesserit and the Fremen and the Harkonnens and all these other great houses, like that's all really cool. But like, if that intimidates people, like again, we're in spoilers now. So like, but that shouldn't stop anyone from seeing these movies, because it's no more complex and in many ways much simpler to understand than the Sith Wayfinder and, some of these other weird machinations in Star Wars. And certainly a lot of stuff in Marvel. I mean, Dune is a legit franchise. And if they keep Denis Villeneuve for this third one, it's going to be a hell of a trilogy. The problem is, of course, is after he does that movie, and assuming it's as great as this one, and he gets off it like he says he will, there's so many books. Yeah, there's like 20 something books. They can do this. They can run this into the ground, and they will.
And they will. Yeah, for sure. What's interesting, and like, there's no real way to quantify this statement, but here's what I'll say. This feels like blockbuster cinema in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. Okay. Like, to me, on our text thread a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Superman the movie, the Richard Donner film. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about how, like, or I was talking about how cinematic that movie is, and how, to me, it's still one of the pinnacles of like the superhero genre as cinema. Yeah. And to me, I like to use the term cinema to define something with artistic purpose and artistic merit that has a clear goal, and then succeeds or exceeds that goal artistically. And even while it can be, and blockbusters often are, for huge profits, they, it's all financial, but like, it has an air of artistic importance. And so for me, if you think about the blockbusters we've seen in the last decade, in the last 2 decades, there are very few that hit this mark of cinema, like blockbuster cinema. Mm-hmm. And so like Lord of the Rings is a really good example. Like, this is blockbuster, sure, but it's also, a high concept, it's fantasy, and it's cinema. It uses cinematic language well. It's well constructed, well performed. Just about every single department is firing on all cylinders. And that's the way this is. And so, when you compare it to something like, Ant-Man Quantumania or whatever, these blockbusters that have come out recently, where you realize just how vapid and empty these things are, it just becomes clear that Dune is not a product. Dune is not a, hey, we have the rights, so let's make something while we can, or, whatever the case may be. It's made because somebody wanted to make it. And that to me makes it more cinematic, much more like cinema than most blockbusters these days. And so that in and of itself is a welcome change. And, like we talked about the visuals, so many movies now kind of have this similar sheen to them. And this just, is like, no, I'm just going to tell a story, and here it is. And maybe it's like, I don't know, there's some kind of classic Hollywood, whatever thought around, oh, look, they're in the sand. This reminds me of Lawrence of Arabia. So suddenly this is feeling cinematic. But at the same time, it just is, to me, more artistically valid than what we're used to right now. And that's sad that we're not used to this. And this sticks out because, this is artistic. And again, it's hard to quantify, like, why is this artistic, but Ant-Man isn't? And it's like, it's hard to quantify that, because clearly artists worked on Ant-Man. Yeah. But why does Ant-Man feel less artistic? And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but it's hard to actually, like, analyze and distill it into specific bullets. Like, it doesn't feel artistic because blank. It's more like, well, the general vibe, it feels more money hungry than, purposeful, like purposeful expression.
Yeah. Those are the kind of movies I want to see, is something that has artistic merit and elevates it somehow beyond just entertainment, which I'm also fine with. But like, the movies I want to buy, the movies that last, are the ones that have that artistic merit to them, because what's merely entertaining fades eventually. It's almost like not a fad, but like it's it's temporal, it's subject to, the sensibilities are subject to change, but like something that's artistic is always like, here's a strange example of that's half of those things. It goes the other way too. 2001: A Space Odyssey is a really cool movie, and it looks great, and there's so much cool stuff in it. Time has not stopped it from being sort of a slow, boring movie.
Sure.
But the artistic sensibilities that are on display in that are what make it a classic for me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure when I talked about it, I probably said something like, it's slow, it's kind of boring, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, like the form saved, like preserved the movie forever.
Sure.
And so even if people think that Dune is dumb in 40 years, I still think they'd look at this movie and go, it's pretty great though.
Yeah.
Pretty well executed. Like the filmmaking here is there's real style here.
Yes. I also think it's interesting. I'm going to pull up the actual figure here. But Dune, the actual production budget for Dune Part 2 is $190 million, which feels low because if you compare it to something like The Marvels, which has a $270 million production budget.
Yeah.
It just feels like with that extra $80 million, where did that go?
Yeah.
And that's a strange thing. But what's cool, and I hope Hollywood takes this into account, is we just ended 2023, and it's weird. The weird reception that a lot of so-called surefire hits received. I don't want to talk about Mission Impossible because that's a different thing, but like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, right? $295 million production budget. And it was kind of like, it just came and went. It was like a blip. It had no cultural impact, no artistic impact.
Yeah.
And yet it was, over $100 million more to make an Indiana Jones movie than a Dune movie.
Yeah.
This is crazy talk.
Yeah.
So hopefully what Hollywood is realizing is what people really want are movies made by people who care and who understand how to make that you don't need all that money to make a movie, to make a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
And after something like Godzilla -1 winning the best visual effects Oscar, it's like, again, $15 million budget is what we had talked about when I reviewed that. And the visual effects look fantastic.
Yeah.
That you don't need all this money, and they're just throwing money down the drain.
Yeah.
And there's not, it doesn't amount for anything on screen. Like there's no advantage to having that much more money in the bank. It's such a strange thing. But what I really want for Hollywood to learn after the disaster of 2023 and now Dune's success is put people in charge who care. But people in charge who are artistically minded and can do things on with limitations, and put limitations on your filmmakers. Like limitations aren't a bad thing. Limitations are a necessity. Every artist needs to know where those limits are, or else you just end up with a mess. It's why you have something like the Star Wars prequels where there were no limits on George. He could have asked for anything and done anything, and everybody would have said yes. And that's what he got. And so if you have no limits, there's no guardrails. There's nothing to butt up against and realize you're going too far. And so I want Hollywood to create those guardrails for their artists. I want them to push the artists to think artistically and rely on the department heads to come up with cool, creative solutions to problems that that they used to have to do, right? Like for too long now, we're just in this world where, I don't know, I want 5,000 aliens. And you're like, okay, how are we going to shoot that? It doesn't matter. Just let the VisFX team do it. And you just end up with like this smear of stuff. But, you know, in the good old days of 2001, when you had to populate a scene with CG extras, you had to be really thoughtful about that, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so anyway, all that to say, like there are things that Hollywood needs to learn, and it's that throwing a bunch of money on screen doesn't make a better film. And putting people in charge who are truly passionate about it will always result in a better film. So this is why Godzilla -1 succeeded, and it's why Dune succeeds, because the people care, and they're not without guard posts, you know?
I wonder if with the effects of Godzilla -1 and who was it? The writer for American Fiction was up there with getting his award for original adapted screenplay.
Adapted, yeah.
And he'd said like he put forth the sentiment like, if you have $200 million, you could make one $200 million movie, or you could make 20 $10 million movies.
Yeah.
And like you could do that, not only because movies like American Fiction can be made on a $10 million budget, but like it seems, I'm no expert, but it seems to not take as much money, as you're saying, as everyone thinks it does, or as some studios think it does, or some people feel obligated to give certain filmmakers. Is if you can do Godzilla -1 on a $15 million budget, then that's sort of me. Now, I'm sure like if you want a world-ending machine and a Transformers movie and, you know, crazy Marvel stuff, there's okay, maybe you need more than $15 million. But the idea being there seems to be so much waste, whether it is throwing money at marketing, throwing money at your talent, throwing money at visual effects. You should pay you need to pay the visual effects artists well and give them good working conditions. But perhaps the waste comes with poor planning. Like you said, like just have the aliens on the screen, figure it out, render them, instead of a director like Denis Villeneuve, who seems to come through and say, here's how we're going to shoot everything. Or Chris Nolan, we're going to do as much in camera as humanly possible. And here are some things I thought of to achieve that. You know, all this stuff, all this stuff, we're going to do micro photography. We're going to just take pictures of stuff. It looks weird up close. And people go, oh, wow, it looks otherworldly. And he's like, fucking A, right? Just told you. And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's possible. You just need to think about it and figure out ways to do it. And studios say, hey, you have this much money and that's it. And filmmakers go, that's fine, because I thought of some cool stuff we can do anyway. And everyone goes, great, let's make some money.
Cool. Doesn't it just make financial sense that you should try to invest as little as possible to make as much as possible?
Yeah.
And yet what they're trying to do is they're thinking like, the more money we throw at it, the more we'll get back. But I think what we're proving is that that's not the case. It might have been the case when superhero movies were really, really popular and it was the it thing, and you know you could throw a bunch of money at a movie and make a bunch of money. But those days have passed, and they passed very quickly. And so we're at a point where you have to make them as cheap as possible. I mean, don't skimp so much that it looks bad, Madam Web, but like, you know, but skimp as much as you can within reason, and you'll turn more profit, right?
Well, and don't meddle. Like, Oppenheimer works because Universal let Christopher Nolan do his thing.
Yeah. Not
like go crazy, but he had a vision and he had solutions, and they said, great, here's enough money.
Yes.
Okay. And then Denis Villeneuve, here's my vision, here are solutions. And they said, cool, here is enough money for Warner Brothers.
Yep.
Sony, what's her name, came in and directed and said, here's my vision, here's your jumbled script, here are solutions. And Sony said, cool, here's money, and we're going to be there every single day telling you what to do.
Yep.
And that's why you get Oppenheimer and Dune over here, and you get Madam Web over here.
Yep.
You know?
Well, that and the people, right? You have to have the right people. You have to have your Denis Villeneuve. You have to have your Christopher Nolan. You have to have your Greta Gerwig in order to get your cultural touchstones. If I asked you right now, who directed Madam Web?
S.C. Gwynn? No, that's the Empire of the Summer Moon. S.C. Johnson, A Family Company.
Yes. You're thinking of Dakota Johnson, the star.
No, it was S.J. Clarkson.
S.J. Clarkson?
Yes. I was close.
Well, look.
S.E. Hinton, the Outsider. What was that? The Outsiders?
Yes.
Is that what S.E. Hinton wrote?
Yes, I think so. I don't know anything about S.J. Clarkson. I'm not going to say anything about her. What I will say is you have to have people who are passionate. It can't just be a job. And I read an interesting quote the other day from, I forget his name. He's the screenwriter of Dragon Ball Evolution. And
I can't possibly figure out who that would be.
Yeah. It was like a quote that I think he had written in a book that was like a Dragon Ball encyclopedia or something. And anyway, they had interviewed him for it, and he wrote something, and this came out again after Akira Toriyama passed away. And so he's like, in honor of Akira Toriyama, here's what I had written, and blah, blah. And what it was like a heartfelt apology. And basically it was, look, when I took that job of writing Dragon Ball Evolution, I saw a big paycheck. And he's like, and I did not, I'm not a fan of Dragon Ball.
I didn't care. Yeah.
I don't care. Yeah. And so he's like, and looking at it now, I see why people were as upset at me as they were. Yep. He said, I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. And as a fan of other franchises where I'd be devastated if this happened, I understand now that you're devastated what I did to that. And so he's like, I'm sorry for ruining Akira Toriyama's classic work and blah, blah, blah. But this is the thing.
I'm sorry for causing his death. That's my work.
Indirectly, but directly. It's like, it's just a crazy thing that somebody who has no passion can be hired for a big studio movie.
Yeah.
And somehow someone thinks that's ever going to work.
This could be the only time this is adapted to the screen in live action, and we're going to hire someone who does not care about
cares
that.
0% about it.
And when there's so hundreds of thousands of people who would kill to be in that position and take way less money to do it,
Well, and so there are so many fans who not only are knowledgeable and passionate about it, but also have the skill set to do it.
Yeah.
And then there are people even a rung above that who are like, I respect Dragon Ball. I don't love it. I don't know a lot about it, but I'd like to give the fans something they can be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the next rung up. And then the next rung up from that is like, I just want the money.
I feel like sometimes, because every now and then you come across someone like on Reddit or so wherever you hear some article, it's like this person wrote, an actual really good, someone thinks of a way better story, or someone comes up with a really great idea for, we've done it on this show a few times. Like, just here's just a random idea for a Star Wars movie or stuff that people think of. And you go like, how is it that those people aren't working in Hollywood? Yeah. And then you realize, because this is their only idea. It's a really good one, but it's their only fully fleshed out idea. But even then you go, okay, but can't we just buy the script? Yeah. And that person can just like
buy the idea.
Yeah. Just they can say they sold a script, but they still work at,
Dairy Queen.
That's like one of the only good things about not being able to market a movie on who wrote the screenplay is that you could just hire someone who has no credits.
Yeah.
And just be like, hey, this is, I know you're really nobody, but this is a really fucking awesome, Madam Web script you wrote here.
Yeah.
So here's $500,000. And they go, holy shit, that's more money I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like, hey, if you write something else, let us know. And
Right.
then that person never writes anything again.
Yep.
And they can't tell anyone they wrote Madam Web because that was part of the NDA they signed when they took the money.
Yeah.
And I work at Target. I can't talk about where I got $500,000 from.
Yep.
But I know, and that's enough for me.
Right.
Shit, Dustin, that'd be enough for me.
That'd be enough for me. I think like when a studio decides, okay, we're going to make a Madam Web movie or, anything based on a property, one of the first things they ought to do is hire an expert on that property and be like, okay, you've clearly thought about this. What do you want to see? What do you think works? What stands out to you about it? Like, at least ask the question, what do you love about it? Yeah. And let the nerd you're paying, a salary to tell you, oh, okay, I'll tell you what I really love about whatever it is, Nightwing.
Just pay them $5,000.
Yes.
For one meeting.
One conversation. Yeah. Tell me what you love about
afternoon on Zoom.
And when we go hire our screenwriter, we'll make sure that they deliver these things that you love.
Yeah. Like your YouTube channel is clearly all about Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
You have a lot of followers.
Yep.
We want 4 hours of your time. Here's $5,000.
Yep.
Just sit here and talk to us about Dragon Ball Z.
Right.
And you can't tell anyone that you did.
Right. Yep.
I'd do that. I'd sit there and be like,
totally.
Here's all my, I wouldn't give them any story beats, but I would be like, I love the action and I just love the characters and I love the heroic, I love the archetype, I just do the thing. And then
Dustin, what do you love about Sonic the Hedgehog? I love that there are no human characters except for Jim Carrey. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, got it. Okay, cool. We can get rid of all the human characters. Like I also say that every company, every corporation needs a director. Like the title would be executive director of common sense, and that's what everybody needs is just the guy who has total immunity.
Yep.
And can say anything to anybody. Go to the CEO and be like, "You, sir, are an idiot."
Like an independent counsel, like the Robert Mueller of this story.
Correct.
You have no stake in the success and the financial success of the film. You don't work for the studio. You don't work for the unions. You were paid for your impartiality.
Correct.
And like Ridley Scott can be telling you like, I'm going to do it this way. I want you to fuck off. And you go, hey, you know what, Ridley Scott, why don't you fuck off? I'm the independent counsel and I say this is stupid.
I'm the executive director of Common Sense.
And Ridley Scott says, you can't talk to me like that. And you say, yes, I can, Ridley. I'm the EDC.
Yes.
I'm paid to talk to you like that, sir. That would be my dream job. Like, you can't do anything to me. I've already been paid, and I have a security clearance to be on this set.
Correct.
To tell you that this shot fucking dumb.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeesh.
That's my opinion. Meh.
Yep.
Oh, sign me up.
I know. Speaking of, I think we're getting off topic, but speaking of Ridley Scott, did you hear that Gladiator 2 is so over budget? It's currently, they've sunk $310 million into this movie.
I'm not excited for that movie anyways.
Me neither. I love Gladiator.
Gladiator's so good.
Such a good movie.
Yeah, it's
have
so
no
good.
interest in it.
Yeah.
In a sequel.
Oh, cool. A sequel. About who? About who?
I don't know. Doesn't matter.
All the main players are dead.
Mm-hmm. I don't
care.
Like,
again, like Gladiator is... God, just real quick. The problem with that is Gladiator is a titular character. Gladiator refers to Maximus.
Correct.
Maximus dies at the end of Gladiator.
Yep.
Marcus Aurelius is murdered at the beginning. Commodus dies.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Everything's done.
I don't even know who was emperor after Commodus, but I'm pretty sure that Marcus Aurelius was actually called like the last good emperor of Rome.
Yeah.
So all the rest of the emperors of Rome are just terrible.
Yep.
So if it's just another movie about another gladiator,
who cares?
I don't care. Yeah. Because you know what? Whoever's emperor in Gladiator 2 doesn't want to make Rome a republic.
Yep.
And so what's the main character fighting for?
No idea. But anyway, speaking of exorbitant budgets, there you go. $310 million for a Gladiator movie.
Insane.
Yeah. But they haven't even sunk marketing costs into that yet.
Yeah, that's, oh boy.
Imagine another $100 million in marketing. You're at almost $500 million into this movie. There's a lot that Hollywood should learn from Dune 2.
Yeah.
And can learn if they just pay attention. And there, we've hit a bunch of them. Chief among them, though, and this requires no further explanation, is just write a good story.
Please.
Because the best marketing is word of mouth. And if you write a good story, then it's a good movie. And if it's a good movie, people will tell people that it's a good movie. And then those people will go see it.
I mean, and if you make it well, it has staying power.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's not just, oh, let's go see this. It looks fun.
Yep.
It's like, 10 years from now, you go, wow, still looks great.
Yep. And people will buy it on Blu-ray and, and it'll be a lasting like conversation piece.
Yep.
It won't suffer the fate of all these Netflix movies that like come out and then are forgotten a week later.
Or suffer the fate of the David Lynch Dune, where like most people are like, it wasn't that good. But then some people were like, I like it because it's the only Dune movie that exists.
Yes.
You don't have to pretend to like it anymore, you guys.
Yep, exactly.
There's something better now.
Exactly.
It's like saying you like the 90s Captain America.
Yes.
It's okay, guys. There's a good one now.
Yeah, you don't have to resort to that.
There's better. We've done better.
Correct.
You can join us here.
That's exactly right. No,
I think people should again, we're past spoilers, but I hope that people are seeing this, but I'm hoping that a lot of people see this. It deserves it.
Yeah.
Denis Villeneuve deserves it. And it deserves to be made a positive example out of, like you said.
Yep.
So,
yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Put it on your list.
Yep. For sure.
As for the Blu-ray, like I wanted to wait until this came out so I could get part 1 and part 2 as like a double set.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, is there going to be like a third set with Messiah? But that movie hasn't even been greenlit yet. So
yeah. Oh, it's going to happen.
Oh, I'm sure it'll happen.
It'll happen. And I think Denis said he's doing another movie in between. So
gotcha.
Yeah. Like he's now moving on to something not Dune related.
Yeah.
Which is just going to slow everything down, but
probably good though. But
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. As far as I understand with Messiah, with the plot of Messiah, it's okay if time passes a little bit between making these things. So,
Yep.
So Warner Brothers can go back and do its silly Godzilla, King Kong stuff.
Oh, Lord.
And all the other junk it's trying to get off the ground. So,
Yep.
We need some time to pass where like horrible decisions are allowed to play out for that. So that David Zaslav changes things or just goes away.
Yep.
Because you don't want him to be like, look at the success of Dune Messiah, though. I'm great. And we all go, that's the only cool thing. And it has nothing to do with you, you know?
Yep.
Yep. Anyway. All right. Well, that's Dune. Part 2.
Dune.
Cool.
Part 2.
Hopefully next week, you'll hear Kellen and I talking about Mike Flanagan. If his allergies let up. We'll see.
Yep.
We'll see. Okay, cool. Well, great. See you guys later.
Bye.
Whee!